Republican Senator Ted Cruz appeared on Newsmax to promote his new book, and get ready for this because it's cringy. Unwoke. Ted Cruz is out with a new book called Unwoke. Yes. Yep. That's correct. You heard me right. Unwoke. Oh my goodness. And I want to show you a moment from this interview, discuss a few takeaways from what he says is in the book, and then take this as an opportunity to explain to you how I think this concept of wokeness, but more specifically Republicans' reaction to it and weaponization of that term, teaches us lessons about politics. Before getting into any of that, though, let me play the clip. And I just want to say up front, in case you haven't seen my previous fact checks of this, he'll push the idea that Target sold Tuck-It swimsuits to children. That just never happened. Not a single Target sold that. Just a lie. With that being said, here is Ted Cruz.
Behind this book, underneath these pages here, talk to us again about this and why you think it's so important to have this book in your hands.
Well, it's important to understand, number one, how and why this happened, how the leftists, let's take big business. There's a chapter on big business. You got to be wondering, how on earth did big corporations become the economic enforcement arm for the radical left, where they cancel you, they fire you if you disagree? Well, this walks through the takeover, but it also, in terms of the battle plan of how to win, it does a deep dive on Bud Light and Target. You look at Bud Light. Has there been a brand in our lifetime that has lit itself on fire more because the customers stood up and revolted, and Bud Light went from the #1 selling beer in America to it dropped out of the top 10. It lost tens of billions of dollars because they looked down at their customers with absolute condescension. And then you fast forward to Target, where they were marketing LGBT goods and to young kids, and in particular, they're selling swimsuits for 2- and 3-year-old boys that are advertised as tuck-friendly, so they can tuck their genitals out of the way and pretend to be a little girl. And you know what? Moms got pissed and said, why are you trying to indoctrinate my children? Now, here's what's really encouraging. If you look at the conversations of the top executives at Target, what they were saying as this scandal exploded is, we don't want to be another Bud Light. How do you make corporate America not woke? You increase the cost of being woke, and you make it more than the benefits. And what this book, Unwoke, does is it lays out exactly how we are winning and how we can win.
So aggravating to watch, but I think honestly we're going to have a good, valuable discussion because of it. So first, let's address the specifics of what he said. Then we'll zoom out to the broader conversation about woke this, woke that. He brought up Bud Light and said that's a great example of a corporation that went woke, and then true Americans didn't have it. They wouldn't allow for that nonsense. And it's actually true that their business, Bud Light, was hurt significantly. And if you missed, by the way, this story, let me explain what caused the backlash from conservative America. They sponsored a trans woman. Well, then what did she do? What caused the backlash? Nope, that's it. That's it. That's the entire story. Bud Light sponsored a trans woman. You don't get to say that you're just concerned for the kids or whatever when you boycott a company for sponsoring an adult woman. The underlying assertion there is that just the existence of a trans woman is something worth boycotting, which is insane. And it makes me so angry because I want to believe conservatives when they say, no, we just want to make sure certain complex conversations are happening at the appropriate ages and certain procedures are happening at the right time. And there absolutely are wonderful spaces for those good faith discussions that are compassionate, fact-based, and measured. But freakouts like this indicate it is, for many people, just hatred. And I think we have to be honest about that. And it's funny because he acts like the most notable takeaway from that boycott was some great show of conservative strength. No, the takeaway was, what the heck is wrong with you if you stop drinking a beer because someone of a certain identity was sponsored by it? How does that impact your life, you weirdos? And then he brings up Target and makes the false claim about Tuck-It swimsuit. Here is a part of an interview I did with a MAGA rapper, Forgiato Blow, at Trump's second arrest, where I had to fact check him on that claim.
I am here with
Forgiato Blow.
And you recently released a song, right, about Target?
Yeah, Boycott Target went #1 on iTunes charts. Pretty cool stuff.
Heck yeah. And what motivated you to write that song?
I'm pretty much the evil agenda they're pushing on these children, right? So as I was just telling the man before, it's not like an anti-gay song. You know, it's an anti-putting children pride clothes with bathing suits where you can uptuck your genitals in.
But they didn't do that, right?
Target did do that.
No, that's been like debunked 30 times.
It's not been debunked. I've been in Target. I've held it up.
It's for adults.
No, there's a children's side. You want to see right now on my stuff?
I promise that it's only in adult sizes.
It's not adult sizes. You want to see the children's stuff? I have it. Here is children's clothes, my guy. Celebrating Pride Month. These are children's clothes.
See, you told me tuck it.
No, all the Pride clothes.
You think any pride clothes are bad? Telling a child, hey,
Yeah,
whoever
a kid,
you are,
a kid doesn't
straight.
need to be wearing a shirt. And you
says
hey, my man,
a
you
rainbow.
think a kid in 3rd grade needs to be wearing a shirt that says "Trans Life Matter"?
No, sir.
Sure.
Let me tell you why.
Tell me why.
I wouldn't even pay for a Bud Light.
Thank you.
That connects somehow.
It does connect.
So you could see while I was saying it, headlines being thrown up on screen, fact checking the ridiculous claim being made, and then he obviously couldn't find the proof he was referencing because it doesn't exist, so he resorts to Trans Lives Matter t-shirts, I guess, are bad. Okay. As a general point, if you have to resort to lies about a subject to convince people of your stance, as he was having to do there with the Tuck It for Children talking point, that's a reflection of a flaw in your stance. I don't have to, for example, distort any facts to deliver a compelling explanation as to why you should want universal health care or investments in infrastructure or strong unions. But so often these right-wingers do. So those were the two bizarre claims that Ted Cruz made. Now let's zoom out. Luke, you might be asking, what is this whole situation with the word woke? My goodness, woke, 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 woke. And so let's dive into that. Put very simply, people on the left originally identified as woke as a way of saying we are aware of the social injustices and want to work to address them, income inequality, racial inequality, etc. We see them, we care, and we want to change them. Then it became sort of perceived by the right wing as a word that represented essentially too far left on cultural things. So now they'll call it cultural Marxism too, which that term has some dangerous historical baggage attached to it that we won't even get into today. Essentially, it became a word that sums up anything more right-wing conservative Americans don't like as it relates to politics, especially focusing on social and cultural things. Now, that, by the way, is the way I'm defining it for you, but most right-wingers don't even have an idea of what they mean, it seems, by that term when they use it. Here's an example of another author of an anti-woke book who got asked to define woke and it didn't go well.
Of Americans consider themselves very liberal, and probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, you know, when we talk about traditional,
what does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that this is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. It is sort of the understanding that we need to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. It's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Yeah, look, your time.
Yikes. So then we get to why so many within the left scoff every time a right-winger complains about wokeness. Well, once they started screaming about it and repeating the term over and over, it sort of lost its meaning, and it became clear that it was a way to overemphasize either distorted or insignificant things to distract from their policy failures on significant subjects. So someone like Ted Cruz loves spending a bunch of time talking about the scary woke mob so that he can distract from the fact that he's not bringing forward meaningful policies that will benefit his constituents. And this brings us to what my consistent viewers have heard me talk about in the past many times, but I think it's due time for us to go through it again, sometimes when I have these conversations and brush off the criticism of wokeness, even people I've gotten messages after similar segments, center left, will say, well, don't you think some people, I get what you're saying about the Republican Party and their lack of meaningful policy, all that, but don't you think some people on the left take things too far? And my answer is, of course, yes. Now, the examples Ted Cruz cited aren't examples of that because Bud Light and Target didn't do anything I'd consider too far. I'm pretty sure Target just had a pride display. And then, like I said, a bunch of people lied about what they were selling. But in other scenarios, of course, there are people on quote unquote my side who I don't stand with, tons. But when it comes to this group of far left people that people refer to as too woke, the right wing would say they're the wokesters gonna take down America. I see a couple things happening. Number one, some of the evidence of their stances that are purported to be theirs is often just fabricated, as we discussed with Target. And then second, the real examples of the crazies are getting too much focus because they're just sort of randos. And that brings us to this. Why is it that I say politically in this moment we should spend so much time focused on extremism in the Republican Party, namely MAGA? And I don't talk a whole lot about, sometimes, but I don't talk a whole lot about extremists on the left. Well, because I try to focus on relevant political actors as a way of most accurately calibrating my response to issues to the actual magnitude of those issues. Meaning, in a world this big, there is someone essentially saying just about everything. And there are mobs of people saying just about everything. And especially now we live in a moment where social media is driven off of engagement. So really insane, engaging, controversial stuff is then inherently going to get a lot of attention because it's more engaging. So a lot of times people ask me, are you concerned with the extremism of the radical left? But I pretty much exclusively hear you talking about Trump and MAGA when it comes to extremism. And that's not an accident. That's my intention because, yes, there are wackos all over the political spectrum. Out in the world, on social media, you can find people who identify as I do, as liberal, saying very strange things. But how do I know if that's at all relevant, at all representative of a larger issue? Well, in politics, we have a really effective way to make that judgment. Look at positions of power. We live in a democratic society, so people can win over enough popular support with their viewpoints to be in positions of power. That's someone we can point to and say, hey, that's representative of a large enough group of people that it's notable. And then if a lot of elected officials hold a certain view, then we really know it's notable. And let me just kind of give you an example of how these misunderstandings of the prominence of views or their association with positions of power kind of messes things up. So I live in Texas. I've grown up here and currently live in Texas. And this conversation has played out so many times in my life, especially now that I have a show. People will say, I've seen your show and you sound reasonable, but I just don't think I could ever consider myself on the left or a Democrat. And I'll say, well, why? And they'll say, because I have these conservative views. And I'll say, which ones? Which particular subject are you talking about? And so often here, it's, I'm conservative on guns. That's what it'll be. And I'll say, what do you mean by that? Because almost always people actually are willing to talk about different gun safety measures. And so then they'll say, well, you know, I'm actually okay with this regulation, that regulation, universal background check, red flag laws. And we go down this road and I outline all the things the current elected Democrats are pushing for. And the quote unquote conservative on guns person is down with all of them. So I'll say, why do you think if you're on board with all of the mainstream Democratic Party stances, you still feel like that's a conservative position? And they'll say, oh no, because Democrats, they want to ban all guns, all of them gone. And then I'll challenge them, find me an elected Democrat who's proposing that. You can't. They're not running on it. They're not introducing legislation. That's not actually a thing being pushed for by people in positions of power who are Democrats. That's something you heard out on TikTok or something. So you got to calibrate, because then you can have much more meaningful and relevant conversations about these subjects. And every time I say to someone asking me the extremism question, can we exclude the random social media videos or someone you talk to out at a university or something and look at positions of power? Very quickly, people understand my point. The political extremism is manifesting itself so much more prominently in the Republican Party. The leader of the party, Donald Trump, tried to overthrow a democratic election and prevent the peaceful transfer of power. One of the most influential Congress people, Marjorie Greene, used to be a QAnon influencer, thought Jewish space lasers started wildfires. The Republican Party as a whole is terrified of and controlled by the MAGA wing. Whereas the Democratic Party is led by Joe Biden, who was the most moderate choice in the primary in 2020. And then what has he done? Passed just solid policies like the infrastructure investments, veterans health care, expansions, and decreasing prescription drug costs for seniors. You can't possibly point to those things and say radical. So are there powerful Democratic elected officials with views that, depending on where you are on the political spectrum, you'll disagree with? Absolutely. Even potentially aggressively so. That's life. That's politics. But has the Democratic Party been taken over by extreme voices like the GOP has? No comparison. You can't make that case in good faith. Again, there are wackos. I'm not trying to say ignore your lying eyes or lying ears on Twitter saying weird things, but that is not representative of the power like MAGA is. What's the worst scenario if Biden gets into office again in a second term? Some more electric vehicle chargers, charging stations, a few more gaffes and stumbles. Great, I'll take it. What's the worst with Trump? Well, he's quite literally promising to lock up his critics and privately planning to send the military on the street to crush demonstrations. And last time he was president, he tried to, again, overthrow democracy and install himself the president. So some bad stuff could happen. And then think about this. Biden can easily work with Mitt Romney or someone like Chris Christie. Big disagreements that matter. We're not downplaying the significance of policy differences, but there isn't the type of detached from reality thinking that exists in MAGA that prevents meaningful policy conversations. And so right now, in positions of power, you have extremism taking control of one party and not the other. And when that's the case, it's your responsibility to give appropriate focus. Don't just to prove you're so in the middle, both sides, every issue. Don't force yourself to make one critique of this side, one critique of this side. I'm balanced. Woohoo. Just focus on the pressing issues, the most pressing issues. And don't allow people to pull you into conversations about the obscure cases of people having wacky views. So getting all the way back around to Ted Cruz, the reason he is fear-mongering about woke so much is because it distracts from everything I just outlined. The GOP is obsessed with the culture war and social grievances and not meaningful, impactful policy discussions. Republicans just aren't putting forward real policies that could benefit their constituents. So instead it has to be, the woke people are annoying. They bother me. Don't sacrifice big, important political policy analysis for essentially reactive social complaints. Now, I want to play on this subject a clip we looked at a while back of Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, perfectly making this point. We can either focus on real solutions or whatever the heck it is that the Republican Party is screaming about.
They're relying on a new magic budget word. That word is woke. The House Budget Chairman says his budget will be modeled after a draft budget put together by Trump's budget director, Russ Vought, which uses the phrase woke 77 times. I think the previous record for the use of the term woke in budgets is 0 always. Call everything woke and then try to cut its funding seems to be the strategy. Housing, woke, chop it in half. Public schools and job training, woke, slash it. Auditing tax cheats, woke, let's not do that. Fighting climate change, woke, none of that. Healthy food for kids and families, woke, cut it. Medicaid, health insurance, heating assistance, cut, cut, cut. From behind this new catchphrase, Republicans want workers and families to line up behind the tax cheaters, behind the polluters, behind the campaign donors, behind the well-connected and the well-off whom they serve. Well, their problem is you can say woke for a while, but then people will notice that they no longer have disability benefits, or that they can't afford their prescription drugs, or that huge corporations are paying nothing in taxes. The woke screen is a smoke screen, and people need to see through it.
Say that again, Sheldon?
The woke screen is a smoke screen, and Americans need to see through it to what Republicans are really trying to do.
Or did you just come up with that?
And he is totally correct. It's such a good way to distract from their lack of a meaningful policy agenda. Woke, 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 the woke mob. So I encourage you, get focused on relevant political actors and not just the latest right-wing obsession, and talk about real issues impacting a lot of people. Before you go, don't forget to become a member at lukebeasley.com/membership. What is that? What does that do for you? You clicked on this video, this is the first time you see me? Well, great question, viewer. You get access to the daily bonus show, Monday through Friday. It's great. It's like this, but more of it. lukebeasley.com/membership. Plus, follow me on Threads at Luke Beasley Official, Instagram at Luke Beasley Official, and X at Luke P. Beasley. And sign up for the Beasley Brief, a daily more newsletter that summarizes the previous day's events by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/brief. And I'll talk to you all next time.